Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hangouts and Headlines here at the start of December. Who can believe it? In 2023. And for those of you that don't know, because I don't know why you would, I wanted to warn you all that this is on my backup computer from about 10 years ago, because my computer that I've been using as my studio and my law firm and everything else for the last 7 years had a motherboard burnout earlier this week. And as stressful as that was, I've been working to recover everything that I've been doing and trying to get things back to roughly where they were before. So hopefully this all holds together. As we say in the biz, right? Come on, baby. You can hold together. And so we're going to try to get through this stream, hopefully with an older laptop. And I've checked it. I've tested it. I've done all these things, but you never know until you actually do it, how things are going to go. So I'm very hopeful that things will work out. Unfortunately, it's been a very stressful week on the computer front. So this is Hangouts and Headlines. This isn't Virtual Legality. This is where we talk with the awesome community at Hoeg Law. And then we go over the sometimes awesome, often not awesome world of media coverage of various events. Today, artificial intelligence, which if I hadn't had my medical mishap at the end of last year, probably would have been a topic we talked about even more in this space, because it's something I'm deeply interested in. And we'll talk about more on that when we get to the headlines later in this episode. So, folks, I did want to say to Sharon here, welcome back to YouTube. Hopefully I don't put you off it again after only one episode today, but took a self-imposed ban in November and is now back in December. I'm very glad we're doing this episode. It was a little touch and go as to whether we would get this studio back up and running using the new computer base today. So welcome back. Hopefully you have a great time today. And thank you for having me as your first YouTube video back in the space. All right, folks. How's everybody doing today? How are you doing? I see Britt is in the chat. I see Tide is in the chat, reminding you to use the live chat and not the top chat, because live chat lets you talk to everybody, and top chat is some algorithm of YouTube just picking who you get to see. So do remember to change to live chat. Tide is always good at reminding people about that. You have co-counsel in the chat saying she has a confrontational relationship with AI. This is true. She does have a confrontational relationship with AI. Kelly C saying, as a writer, this SI story angers me. We'll talk about it. It probably isn't as anger-inducing as you think necessarily. I don't want to speak for you, Kelly, but this isn't actually the articles about sports in Sports Illustrated. It's the sales pitches that they do, and we'll talk about how this was presented in the media, how it went around the various headlines to maybe be a little bit more provocative than it deserved to be based on what we're going to see in the Futurism article. But I don't want to tell people how to judge these things. That's up to you. We'll just go over them, and we'll see how we wind up at the end Hangouts after we go over the headlines. Mike GT 1110 bringing the sports into the channel. It's so funny. I did those Michigan videos, and excuse me. And then when I was going to make a new video, all YouTube wanted to suggest to me was other sports titles. And I was like, I really don't think that's what I do here, YouTube, but thank you. I appreciate it. But yes, the Red Wings signed Patrick Kane, who had a bit of a criminal difficulty on the Blackhawks back when I was in Big Law. But he's now a Red Wing. So hopefully the Red Wings can make the playoffs for the first time in a while. We'll see. It is a very exciting signing, however you might feel about the Red Wings or Patrick Kane. Emily, thank you so much for being a member for over a year. Over a year. Wow, happy to be in this community. Hoeg friends, thank you, Emily. I really appreciate the support. We certainly need it when things like our computers die here. So I'm very thankful for all of you in this space for helping make this channel possible and helping make these conversations possible, especially in such a tough year. So thank you so much. SugarMag78, I really wish our representatives were more tech savvy so we could have some real protections in place in regard to AI and personal data. I think this is a great take. Honestly, one of the problems that we show in this space in virtual legality and also in Hangouts and Headlines, as we'll do today, is that the law is very slow and the people that write the laws aren't necessarily the folks that really understand what the future is in technology. So I think if you've got concerns, Congress is perhaps not so well equipped to handle those concerns for some time, and maybe even in that time, not handling them as well as you might like. So that's part of what we should discuss here is how problematic artificial intelligence is, what legal steps could be taken to prevent some of what we'll talk about today, and whether or not we need to take those or people should be advocating for government to take those, because I think a lot of people are concerned, and justifiably so. Vintage Willow, thank you so much for gifting memberships here at the channel. That support is so helpful. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Papa Rick says, clearly YouTube wants a Hoeg Law sports division. Well, it's funny. I watch a lot of sports. I love sports, particularly football, because of the way the rules interact with the game. It's very much a litigious, legalized sport. And it's one of the reasons why I think it's very popular in the United States. But YouTube really hates it when you bounce between topics. Even this topic, it probably doesn't love. We've covered Michigan football, college football, artificial intelligence, and Disney in the last week and a half. And I'm not an SEO chaser. I'm not an algorithm chaser. I talk about what I think is interesting and what I think is useful to talk about with you all. YouTube doesn't necessarily love that strategy. So here we are. Britt, AI writing articles may not be a bad thing. Is there any way it can be more biased than quote unquote reporters used loosely these days? Britt coming in with the hot takes right from the top rope, really, Britt. Yeah, well, as we talk about here in Hangouts and Headlines, there are certainly headlines and writing and writers that bias their positions and that we try to be aware of as we read through them. Certainly, the fact that it's written by an AI instead of a person shouldn't change our critical thinking skills, right? It shouldn't change our technique in evaluating what it is we're being told and what the basis is for that writer, whether it's real or synthetic, to make the assertions they're making in the newspaper article. So will it be not a bad thing? I think we should want journalists to be out there. We should want journalism to persist. Certainly the conversations we have here about the news, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's in Hangouts and Headlines or elsewise, is made possible by people on the ground and making phone calls somewhere in the world. We all piggyback off of that effort, and I think the AI would have to piggyback off that effort as well. So we want that to be a role that continues, but certainly to the extent that we have trust concerns and the critical thinking is not leading us to a truth value in journalism, AI and pressures on journalists to be better, hopefully like those in Hangouts and Headlines, is something that will overall lead to a higher truth content in the universe. So, yeah. Co-counsel is very happy this morning. This chat is so sweet, so wholesome, and so thoughtful. Love seeing your conversations. I could not agree more, honey. Thank you so much for this community. It's always great to come on and do these videos because you guys are so great. And it's great to have these conversations. And it was great even when I was struggling to kind of put sentences together and keep going on these videos. So I appreciate you all for being here with me this entire year. And even though I think I'm getting pretty close to back to full speed, I know that you all were still here when I wasn't. And I really am very thankful for that. So thank you, everybody. How's the weather where you're at? I see 62 in Fort Worth today. Now that sounds pretty nice to me here in Michigan. Is that pretty cold for you in Fort Worth, Texas, I suspect? It's a good temperature if you're in Michigan. I think it's something like, I don't know what it is outside now, 19 maybe. And so it's cold. We just had snowfall all weekend, and my kids made a snowman the very first chance they could. And that snowman is now sitting on a perfectly green grass yard because the rest of the snow has melted. But because of the density of the snowman is just sitting alone, guarding the house. So if you can put that in your minds, that's the image of Hoeg House. We have a single snowman outside on a perfectly green lawn. Thank you for this comment. I'm going to not take a crack at your name. I apologize for that. This may not be YouTube algorithm friendly, but we like your passion for talking about your interests. I have always thought that the only value I can really present are things that I'm interested in and things that I can offer insider information on. Whether or not that fits the bill every single time on videos, I leave up to you to judge. But I can't just sit here and say, all right, we're going to make up something about video games and business and law now and put out a video that does nothing for me, because one, you'll be able to tell that. And two, it won't be fun. It won't be interesting. And if I continue to do that, I won't want to do this anymore. So it's always going to be what I'm interested in, what I think is important, what I think I can add value to. You'll always get that from me here. Whether or not YouTube tells you about it, I can't say. Sometimes it informs people that are subscribed to the channel that I'm doing a video. Sometimes it doesn't. But I appreciate your support, and thank you so much. That is definitely what I believe in here, is not wasting your time, not wasting my time, not wasting anybody's time, and talking about things that are interesting and that I'm passionate about. Britt, thank you so much for the generous super chat. One of the issues with law and technology in the USA is the issue of keeping people in governments way too long. That's very true. We have a lot of senior citizens in our government. Lots of the current leadership are part of the silent generation, the generation between the world wars, not known for being tech savvy. I don't know that it's their fault, right? Even as I grow into kind of my midlife here, you note that a lot of the technology that I grew up with, that I was very savvy on and that I was up to date on the whole time, goes past you a little bit, right? One of the reasons I want to talk about artificial intelligence and generative AI and this kind of wave of technological innovation is because I want to stay abreast of these things. I don't want to only be asking my daughters about what this means or how these buttons work. And I still do that to some extent. But yeah, as you get older and you get more separated, and certainly government, the federal government in the US is very separated from kind of the average daily life of the citizenry. That's its own problem. You get separated from all these things, and technological savvy is not going to exist for anybody that's separated from living life for so long. So I tend to agree. I don't love term limits because I don't love telling people who they should be allowed to vote for, but I am amenable to the argument that certainly a lot of the politicians in America seem to be completely separated from the daily living of us out here in the rest of the country. So I think it's a good comment. Thank you so much for the super chat, Britt. And on that note, let's see if I can take Han Solo off here behind the scenes, hit more buttons, and say, folks, as you just saw with Britt, it's very important for folks to support the channel. I really appreciate it. It helps us have these conversations here, especially this year, which has been so crazy for me. You can support the channel through links to Playor, and more on Playor in a minute, Patreon, or memberships to the channel, super chats, or buying things from the store. But I put this up primarily here before we've talked about any substance, just to remind myself to check the super chats, to check the memberships, because there was a video where I forgot to do that, and I don't want to do that again. And we try to put in little protective guardrails in place like this one. So don't feel like you're obligated to do any of these things right now. I don't feel like we've had a conversation about the headlines or anything yet. I just want to make sure that people understand exactly how this stuff works online. Supporting, subscribing, liking, telling your friends, leaving comments to these videos, all of that helps as part of this process as well, and doesn't cost anything. So please do that if you like what we're doing here. And Co-Counsel does have the secret name of the snowman to reveal, Melvin. Our kid's named the snowman Melvin. He is a 2 snowball snowman, not a 3 snowball snowman, but he is delightful. You can see him out my window. And it is very fun to see when there's no other snow on the ground. Says pronounced like Inigo Montoya. All right. I can remember that. That is a great pop culture reference to remember. Thank you so much. I apologize for not taking a swing at it to begin with. I am horrible at pronunciations, as folks know who've been with me here for a while. And I hate mispronouncing people's names because obviously they are very important to them. Midnight Dreary, thank you for gifting a Hoeg Law membership. Members, I hope you enjoy the emotes we've got. We're going to add more. We've got a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes as I adjust things, not just with laptops, but also we'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of this video. You probably noticed a little change in the descriptions right now as we record this, and that'll be a part of this story as well. So with that said, how's everybody doing? Any other weather reports? I see some snow on the ground reports from folks. Tide says, I have a winter weather advisory until Sunday. That's no fun. Stay safe out there. That's what I always worry about, is driving in those. So please do stay safe. Tammy says Ohio is rainy today, and good morning. Good morning, Tammy. I'm sorry to hear that. I thought Ohio was always rainy after the Michigan game. No? All right. That'll be my one reference for the day. I promise. Dell says, with term limits, you would seemingly just guarantee that they'll angle for private sector jobs while they have the opportunity. I'm not sure you prevent that without them, but certainly you do have concerns with term limits. In Michigan, for instance, we have very short term limits for our Congress. And what tends to happen is they get big pensions and they go and do other things, and the government can't really use any institutional knowledge for something of significant scope, which is one of the issues that we have in Michigan. So there's a lot of things that are pros and cons to all of these things. I've always kind of sat and said, I don't think people should be told who they can't vote for on that ground. If you like what they're doing, you shouldn't be penalized for it. But I see the other side of things as well. Me and my A says politicians seem to be out of the loop of daily life with even those of us that are in the DC metro area. Seems true. I just visited Northern Virginia a few weeks back, and I think that there is overall friction even in that geographical area. So I think that politicians overall seem to be a little bit separated from the experience of folks living their lives. And how to fix that is not something that I have a great answer to right now, but I think it's certainly worthy of consideration and discussion. I'm glad we're having that discussion here. Nishay Jones says, my mother is Generation X, still calls myself or my brother to ask what buttons to push. Reminded her yesterday that keyboard shortcuts exist. I don't know what I would do without keyboard shortcuts, honestly. So yeah, you just get to that point. I have been a tech person my whole life. We talk about video games here. We talk about cloud and AI, and I'm still finding that stuff just moves too fast. I can't keep abreast of everything. And certainly this year has been a weird year for keeping abreast of the news and the technological advancements for me. But I think you just get to that point where the world just moves on without you, and you get comfortable with that or you don't. Tammy responding to my rain in Ohio comment, too true, Hoeg, we are still sad. I am sorry to hear good people being sad. I'm not sorry that my Michigan Wolverines won the game, of course, but I don't want folks to be sad. So I apologize for the little rib tickling that I do on that. I am proud of my Michigan Wolverines and their 3-time defeat of Ohio State and hopefully 3-time Big Ten champions. As of Saturday, check that out on your local TV, folks. Michigan versus Iowa, Saturday night. It's going to be a big one for the Big Ten championship. Dreary rain in East Tennessee and chilly, says, let's see here. Melly Bobelli, I think. Yeah, it seems like there's a little bit of rain in the middle of the country there. So I'm happy to say that I don't have rain. I have gloomy weather and cloudy skies, but that's just Michigan in the winter, folks. I am not the right person to sell you on the tourist destination of winter in Michigan, but it looks the same as it did from my hospital room last year. So, all right. Linnea says, good morning / good afternoon. Yes, I was watching a YouTube video where I was on with someone else who said good time zone. I thought that was funny. Just because says, I think a very liberal term limit would be fine, meaning long, not conservative, not from the political stripe, like 30 years, which is beyond another career otherwise, but still much less than some people in Congress. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. An age limit is another option, although you run into potential civil rights claims on that. But I think you do get into concerns when you just get way, way beyond kind of the normal day-to-day living, because they're supposed to be representatives of the folks in these various areas. Hoeg, we can talk about the value of term limits anytime. We can set them to something reasonable. I do not think it should be 4 years, but it should not be until you die. Give them 15 or 20 years, and then you got to go. And I think that echoes what we just saw in the previous comment, and I think it's a good one, is that you could pick a time that is a long period of time, 15, 20 years, 30 years, we saw in the previous comment, that they get their crack, they get a long time in Congress or in the Senate, and then you say, you know what, probably we should get some fresh blood in there. I don't think that's a bad notion at all. Tammy says, no, we love the Bucks, but I enjoy the teasing. Well, believe me when I say I had many years in that 17-year period where we had the one win where my Ohio State fan brethren would hang their Ohio State flags on their office door, and we would have teasing, and Michigan never had a chance for long periods of time. So I've tried to take that on here in this 3-year interregnum period, but I'm not sure it will last forever. So try to take it when I can. Britt, thank you again for another super chat. You were very generous this morning, and I really appreciate it. Right now, we have people voting for spending and laws that will not have to deal with the fallout of those votes. That's true. I'm not sure term limits necessarily put people in Congress that have to deal with the fallout of those votes so much. Part of the issue with kind of congressional delegation or legislatures in general is the binding of the future and short-term gain being incentivized over long-term consideration. And certainly I think that that's a problem with the U.S. Congress and legislature. I don't know that that's not a problem in other jurisdictions. Term limits might help. I'd be open to exploring that option. I'm just not sure it would fix it entirely, which don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I will grant you, but I am not sure that term limits get us there on that one. Thank you, Britt. Sardism says, good morning. I'm late because I'm sleepy. I'm on vacation hours. Might fall back asleep, in which case I'll be replay crew. Oh, that's totally fine. I hope you have a wonderful vacation, Sardisms. And I love vacation hours as much as the next guy. So please do enjoy. Get the rest that you need. I'm reliably informed, having gone through the medical system all year, that rest, recuperation, and attendance to your own physical needs is as important as what we would consider more traditional productivity or getting up in the morning or other things like that. So please do take care of yourself. Thank you, Sardinisms. Shreen says, chat is always so diverse. We have weather, tech, and term limits all in the first 10 minutes. So it's Hangouts and Headlines. This show was originally called, when I first conceived of it more than a year ago now, Headlines. We were just going to talk about headlines, and so many people wanted to talk about other things as part of this. It became Hangouts and Headlines, and it's part of what I really love about this show and this format. So thank you, everybody, for bringing all of your different opinions, including co-counsel, who says term limits would have to be in conjunction with other things like a part-time legislature, no pensions, retirement for just 6 years of work, etc. Co-counsel has given this some thought with respect to the Michigan term limits, which are 6 years of work and a full pension and things like that. So I think it's a long-form conversation. Maybe we'll do a civil politics video at some point. We'll really get YouTube upset. We'll cover politics. Maybe we'll do one on religion at some point. And then get back to Michigan football, video games, and Disney. We'll just really make sure YouTube knows exactly what we're about here in this space. Oh, Papa Rick says, yeah, I forgot it was just headlines at first. It was headlines for a moment, and that wound up being like a 13-hour stream, a 14-hour stream, because I had no clue as to how long these kinds of conversations would take. I'm a little bit better at it now, although you can see on your screen that I still probably pick up too many tabs for these conversations, but I like to get thorough in what we're talking about. So, yeah. Sardism says, Hangouts is fun. Hey, Hoeg, have you heard of the Bookwalker? It's on Game Pass. Really neat little adventure type game. You know, I played it on Game Pass for a second. I only got into like the first couple of rooms. You're in a prison to start out with, if I remember correctly. And I want to play it more, but there's been so many games this year. And honestly, not enough time, even for someone going through rehab and not necessarily focusing on video creation, content creation, or otherwise. There's been so much stuff in 2023. It's probably the best year in the history of video games. So I will try to remember that one because it was something that I've checked in on. But I do have a couple of things I'm doing this weekend, so we'll see. Allison says, I love the different approach of the Hangouts and Headline streams. I also love the virtual legality ones. I find them both interesting and engaging. It's interesting because a lot of what we cover in both kinds of overlaps a little bit. So one of the things I do very early on is decide what kind of video I'm going to make. And it's often a choice right up until the end, right until I make that decision of, should I do this as focusing on the media coverage? Should I do this focusing on the legal questions? And I'm glad that folks notice the difference and that people are enjoying it because, as I said before, YouTube doesn't love any of this, right? If I were really trying to min-max audience improvement and viewership and things like that, it would be different channels for different shows, and it would be focusing specifically on topics that get traction. So you see things like the Activision deal, of course, because that had a lot of legal analysis that related to it, but really anything that just is a popular video, you just do again and again and again until YouTube associates you with the place to go for Kingdom Hearts character news or whatever else was really popular. And it's just not the way I want to run this channel, which is not ideal for YouTube, but I've never been about that. So hopefully you guys still like it. Against the Tide also says you also had 10 guests on that day, which doesn't help with the timing of the stream. Well, I always like to let people talk, and that's true. And my friends came out in droves to support what was the first live stream on the channel at that point. I had never done live streaming on my own channel. I had visited others, including Alita's, and I think at that point before headlines, Nick's. I think those were the only channels that I had appeared on separately. I had Alita on this channel and some other things, but it was a big deal. I know Rob was on basically from beginning to end from Law and Lumber, and who helped guide me through, especially early on in that stream. You can see me trying to figure out where all the buttons are. And you get a little bit of that taste of my feelings there earlier this year, remembering how to do all this and remembering as we go along in each of these episodes. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. Go check out that first headline stream if you're interested, because you'll see a very different Rick Hoeg dealing with a lot all at once on a day that I was supposed to have a family obligation. And Mrs. Hoeglaw was nice enough to say, well, we're just going to go out, and got back home before I was even done with that stream. So it's good to have a partner on your side of the court, folks. Believe me. And co-counsel reminds me that Nate joined too. Yeah, I think we had a lot of people join, and Nate was definitely on. Rob was on. I think Ian might have come on. I don't know if I'm remembering correctly. It's so long ago, but also not long ago at all. So one of the things I forgot to do this past week is that the 5th anniversary of the channel was at the end of November. And every year I put up the new stats for the year, and I just forgot to do it this year. So that's going to be a post in the community notes of the channel in probably later today. But it's been a great bit of growth. Again, we passed 10 million views a little bit earlier this year. I probably should have made a bigger deal out of that, but it was very cool. And 5 years of doing this in different formats with taped videos. And honestly, with the laptop dying, almost everything was saved, but my OBS profile wasn't. So I don't know when we'll be back making taped virtual legalities and what that will look like. I haven't set that back up yet, but I preferred the live format for this year anyway, because I like to answer questions and things that I've maybe missed or not explained as well as I could have going through the topic originally. And so live format's probably here to stay for most of these things. But I do have to fix some things up behind the scenes. And once my new laptop comes in next week, I have to move the whole firm in the studio over to that new laptop, because this little Dell, nothing wrong with it, but it is the backup computer I bought when I started the firm. And it does have a tendency to throw up on memory requests and things like the number of tabs I have open. So I'm actually very happy that it's been surviving right now so far. And with that said, let's talk about artificial intelligence and headlines a little bit. So if you see the news this week on Twitter or social media or elsewise, Sports Illustrated, famous magazine and periodical responsible for reporting on sports in the United States, got quote unquote caught publishing articles by fake AI generated writers, as Futurism puts it here. They also have in their subheadline, and this is important, we asked them about it and they deleted everything. Now, this is a story that's a little bit more complicated than this headline would suggest. That's really always the case here on Hangouts and headlines. But we can go over it a little bit. There was nothing I'm back. I don't know where I went just then. Hopefully everything is fine. So AI writing is direction. I'm still cutting in and out, so we're going to just stop for a second here. This is why I need my other computer, folks. Yeah, this is what I was afraid of, even with this current setup, is whether or not this would all work. Put the article back. So somebody suggested not having the article on screen at the same time and seeing if that works better. I'm fond of AI doesn't want the truth out, folks. I do apologize for that. It is almost certainly my computer. I was worried about memory issues with the way I usually put these things together the whole time. So we'll see. We'll see. Someone recommended trying it without the article up on the screen, so we'll give that a shot. Still have to read it behind the scenes here, so we'll see if that works better. I do. All right, folks, I think we're going to do an audible here, football term. So there you go, YouTube, making football references here. We're going to do an audible to change this to essentially just a Hangout stream today. And I'll see if I can't get this working a little bit better next time for talks of AI and Sports Illustrated and whatnot. Unfortunately, I just don't think the computer is going to let me do much more than that on this right now. So I apologize, folks. Mostly I wanted to talk to you about the fact that this particular article is about Sports Illustrated using an outside vendor to provide editorial content that's really related to selling things. So what you might think of as like your Amazon affiliate type links. And it's not the articles that are directly related to the magazine, but it is articles that the magazine is using to try to get higher rankings through SEO and various other aspects of the internet, right? So I think we all have to be cognizant of artificial intelligence being out there and doing these things, but it probably isn't as significant as Futurism makes out. And there are other articles that Futurism has put out that is concerned about AI. And we should always be cognizant of what people's interests are when we look at their articles. And in talking about artificial intelligence creating writing, one of the things that's really important is that these are other writers commenting on what they fear for their jobs, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. And we should be interested in that part of the story. But it does mean we have to take with a grain of salt what a written article says about artificial intelligence writers, because we do know that they are self-interested in, of course, keeping their jobs. And that's how we always have to look at these various things. And I do think futurism probably goes a little bit far in how they interpret what's happening with respect to these artificial intelligence articles. And we'll leave it at that for right now. I apologize for not more substance in this video. I'm very glad to be talking with all of you, and we'll give this another try another day. But for right now, it's not really updating my chat. How is everybody doing? Are you still there? Did I lose all of you? All right. Let's see if folks can hear me now. It's all up in the air. I apologize for the performance of my computer. We'll try to fix it again later on, but it's frustrating because I really was ready for this one, and I was excited to get back to you all. I do think one of the things I wanted to note from a scheduling perspective is I mentioned that we would be doing an early week and a late week. I think most likely it's going to wind up being Tuesdays and Fridays and Sundays here on the channel. Sundays being the Bitcast, of course, with Seasoned Gaming, because that's the one that gives me a day or a couple of days of break between content creation. And I think that's probably necessary for my recovery and my energy levels. So you can pencil in Tuesdays and Fridays making the most sense for a Hangouts and a Virtual Legality in whatever order and whatever type they come in as those news items happen and I want to talk about them. But I also wanted to mention, and I was going to do this as kind of a funny end to the discussion of artificial intelligence is, as you might have noticed, the description of this video says essentially coming soon. The folks behind Player, which was formerly Utreon, which is one of the support platforms we use, again, to make this stuff possible, have come up with a piece of software they're calling PodcastAI, which is going to help write the descriptions to these videos, help get chapter stops that are a little bit more able to do, and do other things to get things ready for YouTube, but also more importantly, to get these YouTube videos on the podcast streaming services that we have for the shows, including a separate stream, I think, for Virtual Legality and Hangouts and Headlines, and get that up in a fashion that I wasn't able to do, especially this year. And so for those of you that are worried about, job loss or artificial intelligence taking people out of positions, it's not going to take anybody's job. It's just going to be doing work that I hadn't been able to get to and that I wasn't, frankly, doing up to where I wanted it to be with respect to the channel and other things. And I know people have been waiting for the podcast to get updated. I think this is really going to help with that. And the guys behind Player are fantastic, and they update everything that they're doing. And there's going to be a lot of cool stuff, like a web page specifically for Virtual Legality and a web page specifically for Hangouts and Headlines, and even an AI chatbot that will talk like me as part of the demo. So you guys can get looking forward to that. We're going to be adding a few AI bits and pieces. Nothing on the screen will ever be synthetic outside of artwork provided by folks like Against the Tide, but I'm never going to be doing any deep fake videos or anything like that here on the space. So YouTube can be okay with that. We are going to be working with PodcastAI to work on descriptions and other things related to the actual putting up of a video on YouTube and in podcast format. So yes. Yes, there is an AI Hoeg. Technically, I had to have them add a disclaimer for it not being legal advice. But I will show you those links, and we'll get it a little bit more up to speed once we get that fully running. It should be very, very soon. Yeah, I apologize for this not being the video that I wanted it to be. I'm thankful for all of you for being in this space, and I'm hopeful that I can get the studio up and running on a better, higher-end computer relatively soon. Sorry so much. I very much appreciate all of you. I did see a super chat, I think, come in while I was down. Thank you so much for the super chat. Here's money towards the fight against Skynet with a new computer. I appreciate it. Britt saying, hey, for the young folks, this is what the internet was like way back when. That's true. I don't actually know what I was broadcasting out, but certainly the internet was not as smooth and responsive as it is now back when I was first learning internet stuff. But I do want to give you guys a good show. I want it to be a high production, and so I do apologize, certainly. June says it's not your fault. Computers glitched. That's true. Although I had hoped that this was all going to work. I had tested this extensively yesterday. And one thing I guess I could ask for is I was trying to reset the volumes, especially with the new microphone setup and something else. Does the volume of this video sound better than prior videos? Is it a little bit louder and more in tune with things like the intro and the countdown? Was one question I wanted to ask. So let me know. Aaron says, Britt, I can still hear the dial-up tone. June says my Google Translate is not liking this slanty page. The image of the Polish newspaper. Yeah, I apologize for that. Against the Tide says Bitcast is awesome. You don't have to be a fan of gaming to enjoy it. Well, I really appreciate that. I think we have a lot of fun there. It's a good rapport between four individuals of differing perspectives on video games. I think anytime you can get that with anything people are interested in, you can have fun conversations. And I think Bitcast is definitely one of those. I'm proud to be on that. Lobster 11 asking the important questions. When am I going to turn into an anime girl VTuber? Nope, no synthetic video content. But you will be able to chat with an AI host through PodcastAI and select, among others, Rick Hoeg. So you'll be able to check that out. It's going to be very cool. I think it's going to get a lot more done in this space. There's going to be a lot more availability of the videos on podcast formats, Spotify, Apple. And I think it's going to be a great thing. I really like the guys behind both Player and PodcastAI. And so I think it's going to be a big deal for the channel. June says, I make everyone in the house listen to Bitcast. They love it. Or maybe it's just you. Oh, that's very nice, June. Thank you. Papa Rick says, oh my God, a VTuber lawyer in general sounds wild. Yeah, it would. Katie says, would it sound like you, Hoeg, or just a chatbot? It's just a chatbot right now. They can absolutely make it sound like me. It's kind of crazy, but it's just a chatbot, which will be on the website in just a little while. And then co-counsel asking if AI Hoeg can unload the dishwasher. Is that a request? Is that what I'm doing after the show? Okay. No, AI Hoeg does not have a physical presence. We're not trying to get into Skynet territory here, but it can answer questions and is as verbose as you would expect from an AI Hoeg. All right, folks. Well, that's where I'm going to call it for today. I apologize again for it not being a more substantive video, but we can just call this one Hangouts. Hangouts and Hangouts. Thank you, everybody. And we'll be working on the tech back end throughout the weekend.